Hello, listeners, and welcome to the Sailing and Cruising the East Coast of the United States podcast. I'm Bela and Mike.
And I'm Mike Wasserman.
This is our podcast about sailing and cruising on the East Coast of the United States. So, Mike, here we are, February 4th. What's new with you?
Not too much, honestly, Bela. We have these weird academic semesters in Germany, so it's the beginning of February, and we're just finishing. So I have a big stack of grading to do. I have one more exam to give next week. But yeah, the students are pretty stressed out between school and COVID and uncertain job markets and all of these things. So a lot of support, supporting the students and encouraging them, and so that's always a big challenge. Let's see. Oh, we have a visiting PhD student from the U.S. who's joining for a year. And you maybe heard about the vast amount of German bureaucracy and paperwork that we have here, which is especially true for something like this. So bringing in somebody to come and live here for a year and finding a place to live and doing all the paperwork was really an interesting adventure. So I spent a lot of time the last few weeks kind of working with her. She doesn't speak much German, so a lot of translation and things like that. So that was good, but it was a navigational challenge, to use a boating analogy. But we got the boat in the slip, no problem. So she settled in and started work on the 1st, I guess Tuesday that was, and it worked out fine.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So always exciting to get new people into the organization, I think.
Yeah, learn. And, every good teacher is a good student, and every good student is a good teacher. So I like to get some new ideas and learn some things as well, and expose our students to some new voices. So she'll teach a class next year, and that'll be great. So yeah, and then I guess in the news here in Germany, we watched the situation between Russia and the Ukraine with some trepidation and concern. I think I mentioned this before when we've been chatting, but it's about the same distance, I think, between like you and Minneapolis as it is between where I'm sitting and Kiev.
Yes.
So it's not so far away. And if you read the news at all, I don't know how much this makes the U.S. press, but there's an interesting dynamic kind of between Germany and Russia and the interplay of the U.S. And there's, a lot of traditional, Russia's been both an ally and an enemy in the past. So it's not quite as clear cut, I think, always as it is in the U.S. And I'm not even quite sure about how I feel about all this. I probably view the relationship with Russia more like an American, a U.S. American, rather than a German. But it's been interesting to watch this year.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, there's a fair amount of stuff in the news about that here locally. But hey, I'll tell you one thing with us. Finally, COVID bit us. So COVID is in the family. So So here's the funny thing. All right, I think this whole thing is ironic. So back in for the New Year, back in in January for the New Year, we were supposed to go out and see Andy and Kate and our granddaughter, 7-month-old granddaughter, and of course the granddaughter's not vaccinated. So prior to the visit, we're very careful and all this kind of stuff. Well, lo and behold, we get a confirmed COVID exposure like 4 days before we're supposed to go out for the New Year's with them. So we call them up and they say, no, we don't want you coming here because we don't know if you guys, are going to get COVID. We don't want you to get sick when you're here, et cetera. So I said, okay, fine. And they said later in the month, in January, we have almost a full week off, and we'll come out to see you guys, and we'll bring June out to see you guys. Oh, that's great. And so the month of January, Elaine and I are like super careful. We're almost like quarantining, right? I didn't go skiing. We're ordering our food online. It's like reminiscent of back when we were, things were really locked down because we didn't want to get a COVID exposure. So before they come out, like 2 days before they come out, we get COVID tests. They're all negative. They come out to see us. They arrive on a Tuesday and everything's great. And on Wednesday, June, the baby starts feeling sick and everyone else is fine. And so she's got a runny nose, a little cranky, but nothing real bad. No maybe a light temperature that kind of comes and goes, or light fever that kind of comes and goes. And she starts feeling okay, but not great. And then so they leave on Friday. So arrive Tuesday, they leave Friday. On Saturday, Elaine starts feeling sick. And Andy, my son, June's father, starts feeling sick. So they both get COVID test and they're positive.
Oh,
June gets a COVID test and she's positive. So here we are for the whole month of January, quarantining and doing all these things so that June doesn't get COVID. And it looks like she's the one that brought it into the family somehow.
Wow.
So, I mean, how funny is that? So I don't have any symptoms. I got tested yesterday. I'll probably get the results later today. So I don't know if I have it or not, but if I do have it, I'm asymptomatic. If I don't have it, I don't know how I didn't get it, because Elaine and I, we live together and we haven't been really taking she's not wearing a mask around the house or anything like that. And, I was holding June and kissing her and doing all those things just like everyone else was when they were here. So I'm interested. I'm really curious as to my COVID test to see what it will show.
You look good. I mean, the listeners can't see you, but I can see you. You look fine. So
yeah, I feel fine.
We'll see.
So
I think there's variation, at least from what I've read from the medical journals, that there seems to be variation in people's immunities and people's ability to fight it. So, and it can vary day to day. Even it's not one person or the other. It's ebbs and flows a little bit. So there's, I guess, a little element of somewhat randomness to it. And hopefully your wife recovers and your son recovers, and most importantly, the baby recovers. And
the baby's fine. So it was like 3 days. It was 3 days for June, and she was back to normal. And it hit Andy pretty hard. He still sounds pretty crappy on the phone. And it's interesting. All 3 times when he got his vaccines, it knocked him down for like a day. And like Elaine and I got the vaccine, and I felt nothing.
Interesting.
So yeah, but the vaccine knocked him down, and this knocked him down pretty good. I mean, he's not on a ventilator in the hospital. He's at home, but he said it's like, getting whacked with the flu pretty hard.
Bummer.
So yeah, so there we go. And here again, him and his wife are both ER docs, so they've been in the COVID soup for the last 2 years, and they haven't gotten it. I don't know miraculously how they can work in that environment and not get COVID, right? So it goes to show you that sort of protective equipment and all those things that they wear work, and the precautions they take. You can pretty much stop an infection. But here we go. They get it at home from the baby. So
wild.
Yeah.
Wild.
I thought
well,
so.
It's just strange, and there's a lot we know and a lot we don't know, right? And we're still learning. So
we still are. Hey, so let's get on with the podcast.
Sure.
We received an email from a listener, Chris Curtis, and he was asking about how to find people to sail with him. So he has a nice sailboat, and he'd like to go out for 3 or 4 day cruises, and his family's not really interested in that. So he's looking, and he doesn't want to sail alone. So he's looking at, so how do I find crew? How do I sort of, connect with people? And so I thought that was sort of an interesting question, and I thought maybe we'd give that a chat today in our podcast. What do you think?
Sure, Bela. That sounds great. It seems like this is a lot like when you took the boat back here from Nova Scotia a few years ago, wasn't it?
That's correct. That's right. I got connected to the captain and the owner of that boat via a website. Exactly.
Yeah. And this is such an interesting issue because it's amazing to me how this works. Like, okay, you're agreeing to spend a whole bunch of time with somebody you've never met in really close quarters, right? On an expensive piece of equipment, right, that can break, right, with lots of potential for problems due to weather, mechanical problems, somebody's an idiot, there's an accident, right? I mean, this is a lot. I mean, I get a little weirded out just renting an Airbnb, right? And that's just somebody's apartment for a couple of days with the owners gone. But this to me is a whole different thing. I can't imagine a couple of weeks on a small boat with a stranger. So I'm curious about this too, Bela. How does it work?
Well, I never quite thought about it exactly in those terms, Mike, but you're spot on. It's like going to live with some stranger you never met before for a period of time, and you can't leave. So that brings up a good point. So I think the first place you look is for friends. So if you know some people, that are adventurous and are willing to go with you, and sailing is pretty easy. I can sort of teach somebody to sail the boat in a half hour. So I think that I'd much rather have a friend or friends with me if that's possible. And I think 3 people is better than 2 people, particularly if they're not skilled. To have 2 is better than, or a total of 3 people is better than just to have 2 and just 1 person skilled. But the first place I would look is friends and acquaintances, sort of people you know. And if that doesn't work out, or you want to have someone who is experienced, because if you're doing night sailing and you're sort of going out for 4 or 5 days at a time, there's sort of a difference between going out for a day sail, and you don't want to do that single-handed, so you want to bring a person with you, versus I'm going for a 4-day trip, I'm going to be 100 miles offshore, etc. So I'm not sure I'd want to bring a brand new green person out in that situation. You want to know a few things about him, and you're gonna have to take night watch, and that's something I wouldn't want a brand new beginner on. So lo and behold, the web is a wonderful thing, and there are several of these crew finding websites and organization. I sort of break them down into 2 categories. There are sort of commercial sites, or I call them, these are my terms, commercial sites, where you basically have to pay a fee, and you can find crew. And some of them are called Find a Crew, Crew Seekers, Crew Find. If you do your typical search online, a bunch of these will pop up. And these will find crew for all sorts of trips. So this is like, if you want to be a crew person on a super yacht, that's a place you can go. If you want to be a crew on a personal yacht, you can go there as well. But I think a much better place to go, quite frankly, for sort of the occasional being a crew, kind of the casual thing that you might want to do with the owner of a boat, who maybe is looking like Chris is for someone to just sail with them. There are several sailing associations, sort of these larger sailing associations. For example, there's the 7 Seas Sailing, or the 7 Seas Cruising Club. There's the World Cruising Association, the Atlantic Cruising Club. There's the Atlantic Rally for Cruisers. There's the Salty Dog Sailing Association. So all of these have sort of crew locator sections to their websites and part of the service that they provide. And you may or may not have to join those associations to participate in their crew finding activities. I think some of them require you to join and others do not. And again, there's many more. I just picked these out, or ones that I happen to be familiar with. So I think, that's a good place to start, is to check some of those out. And I would read the listings, and I would use those as sort of a way of kind of figuring out what people are looking for, the types of opportunities available. Read the people who are looking for crew and see what they're writing. And then if you want to be a crew, read the things that people are saying about themselves who are looking for crew spots, because that's a nice learning opportunity there to figure that out better.
Interesting. Now, this is kind of a dumb question, because you talked a little bit about like moving the boat, right? Now,
yes.
Do you actually have to be on the boat when you move it, or can you not be around for it? Because it seems like, and again, this may be a dumb question, but sometimes I don't want to be on for this, right? Especially if it's a long, really long journey, I'd rather just have somebody take care of it, and I'll meet them at my new home dock, all right, or my new slip. Do people have their boats moved by others? Is this a thing, or do you have to kind of be part of it?
No. There's plenty of people who have their boats moved. So that's a great question, Mike. So, there's the snowbird, as we call them here in New England, the snowbird equivalent for boats. For example, and sometimes these can be private boats. People come sailing up in the Great Lakes, or they come sailing in Lake Champlain or up in New England for the summer. And then they go down to their house in Florida for the winter, and they want to have their boat down there. So captains, they can hire a captain to move their boat. And I can remember during a part of my venture capital days, I used to drive out to Rochester and Buffalo a lot. And the New York State Thruway goes right along the Erie Canal. And in the fall, you would see all these boats, sort of heading south on the Erie Canal, leaving the Great Lakes. And in the spring, you'd see them all heading back the other way, coming from the south, going up into the Great Lakes. So there's a lot of people who do that. And there's a fairly good business that people have in moving boats around, so that certainly happens. And you can hire a professional captain to do those things. So that's actually another place. So a lot of these listings you'll see for these crews are actually captains looking for crew because they have to move a boat. And oftentimes who's hiring you in that case is the captain. So it's not the boat owner. So the boat owner and the captain have sort of a contract, and then the captain is responsible for getting the boat there. And if the captain wants additional crew, the captain will hire you. I think there's some pluses and minuses to this route versus being a crew member for the owner of a boat when the owner is there, as I did with moving the boat from Nova Scotia back to Baltimore a few years ago. So I think if you're on a delivery, if you're working for a delivery captain, I think some of the pluses are, it's a professional captain. They're licensed. This is what they do for a profession. They're pretty skilled. They're pretty experienced. You actually may be able to get paid for that. It sort of depends on the situations. Some will pay you, some will not. Some will just cover your expenses. So that's sort of negotiable, and it sort of depends on, how bad they need people. The other thing that I think you want to be cautious about is that it's an unfamiliar boat, more than likely to the captain and to you. So the captain may have never moved this boat before, so they don't know much about it. And so they don't know how it handles. They really don't know the condition of the boat. Yeah, you can go walk around the boat and check stuff, but you really don't know what shape everything is in. You don't know the equipment and, how everything works. It may be a different navigation system than the one you're used to. So you got to sort of learn, it's like the difference between an iPhone and an Android phone. Yeah, they're both phones. You can figure out how to dial a phone number. But after that, stuff works differently. You don't know if the boat's been maintained properly. So there's that sort of piece to it that you just want to be aware of. And don't assume that the captain knows all those things, because this may be a new boat to the captain as well. The other thing is it's not a pleasure cruise. So the captain's trying to get the boat from point A to point B, and they're probably trying to do that as expeditiously as possible. At the same time, they don't want to break the boat. So they're not going to push the boat really hard like a racer would, and take it out in super high winds and stormy seas. But at the same time, they're sort of on a schedule. So you're not going to stop halfway down and take 2 days and kind of lounge around, Savannah, Georgia for a while and check out the sights. You're moving. So again, it's a great way to do it. A lot of pluses and minuses, but just be aware of what they are.
Interesting. Now, tell me about the process that you followed when you arranged your trip.
Yeah, so I joined the Salty Dogs Sailing Association, and I heard some good things about it, and I was hanging out on their website, and they have lots of other good information there as well. And so I decided to join them. I think it's like $75 a year, so I mean, it's not a lot of money. And they do 3 rallies a year. So a rally is sort of an organized trip that multiple boats participate in. So they do one rally from the Chesapeake Bay to the Caribbean, and that's typically in early November. They do another rally back to the Chesapeake Bay, from the Caribbean in April or May. And then they do a summer cruise somewhere along the East Coast typically. And they can have anywhere from 30 to these Caribbean rallies oftentimes will have 75 or 100 boats in them.
Wow.
And yeah, so the rally is they all congregate in one place. They sort of have some safety briefings and weather briefings and then they sail. They don't sail as a convoy. Everyone's sort of on their own. But they offer various different services and, weather routing assistance, etc. So they're quite good. So they have a crew finding service because many times people, a husband and wife couple want to take their boat from the Chesapeake down to the Caribbean, and there's just the two of them, and it's like 1,500 miles. I mean, that's that takes a while. So, they want to have some crew with them. So I signed up for their crew list for their summer cruise that year, which was from the Chesapeake Bay to Nova Scotia and back. So I posted my sailing resume. I have a sailing resume, which talks about my experience and my availability, sort of when I'm available, for how long, etc. So that was sort of step one.
And then how long did it take to find a match? Like the Tinder of boat apps or whatever. Who swiped? I forget if it's swipe right or swipe left. I don't know, but
yeah, it is. I've been married for a long time, so I haven't dated.
Too.
But
yeah, I've never used a dating app in my life. Right? It's been 36. Well, married for 31, shacked up for shacked up for 31 years, married for almost 27. So I have no idea about this dating thing, but I know you swipe. I just don't know which direction.
Yeah, well, this is like it was weird from that perspective for me, but I'm sure for people who are younger in age. I posted my resume, and I got contacted by the boat owner who was looking for a crew person for the return trip from Nova Scotia to Baltimore. And in sort of the email back to me, he sort of said, "Hey, I saw your resume. You looked interesting." And it's him and his wife, and they wanted a third person for this trip. And they were going to sort of take a leisurely stroll back. It wasn't like, nonstop from Nova Scotia to Baltimore. And like the first contact is email. I imagine like on a dating site. Then we had a phone call, and then we met in person. So yeah, it was sort of interesting. And we were lucky we could meet in person, quite honestly, because on the way from Baltimore up to Nova Scotia, the rally stopped in Newport. And I timed it to go out and visit my son in Providence for when they were going to be in Newport. When the rally was going to be in Newport. And you saw the boat
too.
Yeah, and then I could see the boat, right? So this was each of us wanted to do this, meaning the captain wanted to meet me and I wanted to meet him and his wife, right? Because you can only do so much, over the phone. And so we had dinner together. And that was sort of, our first date to see, okay, do we want to have a longer 10-day date? And so that worked out really well. And if there's a way to do that, I would very much recommend that. So we met, we had dinner together, and that was really cool.
Was that a little awkward? Like, what'd you talk about at dinner? Did he ask you a bunch of questions? How did that go?
Yeah, well, we immediately bonded because we were both engineers. Okay. So that was like, all right, that was like check, right? He's diligent, he's careful, he's analytical, and he's saying the same stuff about me that I'm saying about him in my head, right? So we sort of bonded on that level immediately. But he sort of asked me about my experience. What kind of boats have I sailed on? How much sailing have I done? Have I done any ocean sailing? Meaning, not just in the bay, but sort of out where the waves get big and the wind blows hard. Have I done multi-day passages? Have I done night sailing, and have I taken night watch? Do I have any diet restrictions, right? Or allergies? Do I have any health issues? right? I mean, you can have a health emergency when you're 100 miles offshore.
It's a big problem. Yeah.
It's a big problem, right? And then if the Coast Guard has to come pick up a person, then you're down a crew member. So do I have any health issues? Do I get seasick?
Do you get seasick?
I don't know. And the reason I say that is I always wear a patch. There's these little patches you can buy that go behind your ear. I've read that they work well. A lot of people take Dramamine, which works for motion sickness. But I use these little patches. They're good for 3 days. And every time I've been on a longer passage, I've always used these patches. I've never had any trouble. But I've never done one without a patch.
Nor should you. Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's like, why take that risk? Because seasickness is freaking awful. And once you get it, most of the medications don't work to make it go away.
It's more preventative.
Right? So, yeah, they're more preventative. And I do things like I don't drink caffeine. You don't eat greasy food. There's a couple of things that you can do that you can help to manage that. But so I really don't know if I get seasick or not. He asked me about my navigation skills. What have I done with respect to that? He also asked me, can I swim? Right? Great question. So that was pretty good. So he sort of had his list of things that he sort of went through and talked about and checked. So that was pretty good. And then I had a bunch of questions, right? So at the same time,
because it's dating, it's two ways here, right?
Absolutely, right? Absolutely. This is like, whether it be same as interviewing for a job. The job interview is a two-way street as well. Mm-hmm. So I asked him about his experience, right? I asked him about his ocean sailing experience. I sort of asked him, so what's your go and no go criteria? So if at sort of what weather window do you say we're staying in port? Sort of where's the line for you about, nope, we're not going out, or we're staying in port, or this is getting too rough, we're going to go find a port. How do you sort of make that decision? I asked him about the safety gear on the boat. Is there a life raft? Is there an EPIRB? An EPIRB is, I forget what it stands for, but it's an acronym, but it's basically an emergency locator beacon that if you pull the little string on it and you activate it, or you push the button on it, it basically sends out a signal that the satellites can receive, and they transmit that signal to, depending on where you are in the world, to one of like 5 or 6 of these sites around the world that then start a rescue process. So, do you have an EPIRB? Do you have life jackets? What type of life jackets? I asked him what he sort of likes to do for his watch schedule, right? Meaning there's supposed to be somebody always on watch, meaning at the helm of the boat, or you don't have to be at the helm, but you have to be up and looking around to make sure you're not going to hit anyone. Sort of how does he sort of manage that? I asked him about his alcohol policy, right? So, there's some people who say no alcohol on a boat at all, period. Other people say only alcohol when you're anchored or in port. And other people say, that's fine. You can drink while we're sailing. So I wanted to understand sort of his alcohol policy. And I myself, I don't drink much at all, but I'm like, when you're sailing, no alcohol. Right? Just Zippo. That's the answer I wanted. That's the answer I wanted. That's the answer I got. Right?
And we've talked about that, about how fast the decisions have to get made, and how fast things can move. And I love to drink, but I totally get that. It's like, you're moving fast. It's hard to stop sometimes, right? And you got to have your wits about you. So I totally get that.
That's right. Just like driving. Same idea.
Right. Anchor, I get it. You know what I mean, right? You're calling it a night. That's great. If that's what you want to do, no problem. But
asked him about the navigation equipment he has on the boat and the gear. How many GPS units? Does he have charts also? I asked him what the accommodations were. So do I get my own room or do I?
Yeah, good to ask before you show up, right?
Right. Do I get my own cabin, or do I have to sleep on the floor?
Right.
I wanted to understand that. And what equipment do I need to bring? Right? Do I need to bring my foul weather gear? Do I need to bring my auto inflate life jacket? Do I need to, all that kind of stuff? So that was sort of my list, and his list as we kind of ran through it. So we had a lot to talk about at dinner. It was a long dinner.
Yeah, but it worked. Neat.
But it worked. Yeah. Yeah.
Last question. You talked a little bit earlier about how sometimes you get paid, sometimes it's just expenses. How did it work in your case, and were you kind of satisfied with how things ended up?
Yeah, in this case, he covered my food and all the boat expenses. I had to figure out how to get myself to Halifax, Nova Scotia, and I had to figure out how to get myself home from Baltimore. So I paid for my travel. He covered all the other boat and food expenses. I did take them out to dinner a couple times while we were in port. And, I was doing this to gain experience. So I was getting a benefit out of it, right? I didn't do this because I was looking to get paid. I was doing this because I wanted to have this experience of sailing from Nova Scotia to Baltimore. And I wanted it. So there are examples where people will pay you to do something like this, give you some compensation. But I think for the most part, you want to do it for the experience, for the camaraderie. We're still friends to this day, right? I mean, we spent 10 days together. And so I think I would say don't expect to get paid. Some people will pick up your travel expenses, some won't. Again, it sort of depends on supply and demand equation here. It's a great example of, basic economics and supply and demand. So, yeah.
Neat.
I think it worked out well. I would highly recommend it as a way of getting experience. I think if you're looking for crew, the same thing. Be careful, get to meet the person, ask the right questions. You're going to be together. And I've read plenty of posts on Facebook and other sort of sailing blogs where these have turned out to be disasters, right? The person shows up and there's sort of, it just doesn't work because the first time you're meeting is the person standing at the dock with their duffel bag getting on your boat, right?
Yep.
And, the one other in question he asked me was drugs, right? Mm-hmm. He said, do you, no marijuana, no nothing. And I was the same way. So I'm kind of real straight about that kind of stuff. So, it was great. I highly recommend it. I think it's a great way to find crew or to be crew.
Yeah, I love it. We started the conversation with, oh my gosh, this would make me feel so uncomfortable because, it's like dating, but you're on a 10-day date and you can't get up and go to the bathroom and run out the back door. I mean, unless you want to swim. So,
right.
There are some risks involved in this, but it sounds like, the process you've outlined, sounds like there's some great platforms for connecting people that have similar interests and similar approaches. And I think the questions you outlined are a great guide to help maximize the likelihood that that you find a situation that's a win-win, that both sides get out what they want out of it. So I learned a lot, Bela. Thanks. I mean, now this is not something I'd be like, oh my God, I would never consider this. To now maybe you could be like, okay, I could think about this. So it was nice. Thanks. What do you think? Should we wrap it up?
Yeah, I think this is a wrap, Mike.
Great. Listeners, thanks again for joining us for yet another episode. We hope you found our conversation today interesting and thought-provoking. As always, if you have questions about what we've discussed, please feel free to get in touch with us. This whole conversation today started from a listener email. Our email address is sailingtheeast, that's all one word, @gmail.com.
Hey, and if you enjoyed the podcast, please hit that follow button on the podcasting application that you're using. And if you know of someone that would be an interesting guest for the show, let us know. We'd love to invite them on. It's snowing out right now, Mike. We have about 4 inches, maybe 5 inches of snow on the ground. We're supposed to get another 2 or 3. It's 17 degrees out. I'm starting to think about the boat. I'm starting to think about the warm weather. So it'll be here in the not too distant future, hopefully. So signing off from upstate New York. See you soon.
Bela, thanks. Here it's in the 40s and a little drizzly, but we have yet to have any meaningful snow. And I will tell you that Sandy and I were out for a walk yesterday, and we saw some daffodils poking up. So yeah, it's coming. Hang in there. But from over here in Münster, Germany, see you next time.